trout rods, salmon rods, striper rods, halibut rods, downrigger rods, lead core rods, spinning rods, and more. If you want a high quality, high performance rod that won't let you down out on the water, go to fishhuntshoot.com and check out our selection of high quality, high performance fishing rods. Fish on, right there. Fish on the Panther Martin. He's a little guy, but we were off to a start. A little rainbow, a little wild rainbow. Jumped all over that Panther Martin. We'll get him back in the water here. And there he goes. That was just a little baby. See if Mr. Big is out there. Fish on, right there. Right off that ledge on the far side. Feels a little better than the other one. Still no monster, but it's like a rainbow on the Panther Martin spinner. A little wild rainbow. We'll get him right back in the water. What a beautiful little fish, though. They're so feisty. Here he comes, right there. Right through the lip. And off. There he goes. Over there, there he goes. That was cool. Well, see if he's got a little pell out there. Right along that, there's a real distinct ledge on that side. You can see some bedrock over there coming out of the water. Well, that extends down in, and those fish are sitting right along that edge. So we'll angle a cast upstream here, allow it to drift a little bit, get us some depth, then we'll engage and we'll swim the spinner out of there. Middle American is a big river. It pays to be able to cast, fairly long distances. There we go. The Trigger Spoon Jr. Small spoon, big results. Get on over to fishhuntshoot.com and get yours today, and you'll be yelling fish on tomorrow. Just like that, baby. Howdy folks, Cal Kellogg here. I've had quite a few requests to do some videos on river fishing for trout. So as you can see from the beginning of this video, I went down and hit the Middle American this morning and caught a couple small trout. My plan was to hike into a more inaccessible part of the river. I was going to hit the river at daybreak and fish until about 10 when it started getting hot, and then hike out. Well, I woke up to a bunch of computer problems this morning, and I didn't actually leave my house until 9 o'clock. So I had to, lickety-split, get to somewhere where I could get out of the truck and start fishing. So I went to Mammoth Bar. It's a very popular a part of the American River, Middle American. There's a motorcycle track there. A lot of people sunbathe out there. A lot of people soak worms in that little stretch. So a lot of the more quality, size fish have pretty much been mopped up in that little stretch, I would say. But I knew I could go in there and catch a few fish, which is, what I did. The fishing is much better above and below that part of the river. But the gist of what people have been asking for is kind of a tutorial on tackle, end tackle, lures, baits, and the rods themselves. So that's what I'm going to talk about right now. If I'm fishing a medium or large size river like the Middle American, the Truckee, something like that, I primarily run with 3 different offerings. I can switch it up at times, but these 3 offerings have proven to be very effective. First is my big fish bait, and I always carry 2 rods. So first is my big fish bait, and it's either a Rapala or in this case a Yo-Zuri El Minnow. It's some sort of, 2.5 to 3 inch sinking minnow plug, typically in a rainbow pattern. This is going to draw strikes from browns and big rainbows. If they're there, if they're aggressive, this is going to get it done. Cast this out. Let it sink with the flow, engage the reel, let it swim across current, and work it aggressively you're trying to draw a reaction strike. You want to show those big predators something that looks like it's a substantial meal and it's getting away, and they have to react quickly in a stream. So that's what you're trying to get done with the minnow plug. I threw this several times today. Didn't get any strikes, and I didn't get any follows, and that kind of tells me there were no large fish in that stretch of the American, because typically when I go throwing these baits, I might not always catch fish on them, but I always get follows. I'll see those big old shadows come up, and it gets your heart going if nothing else. Didn't see that this morning. So that brings us to my numbers bait, and my numbers bait is a Panther Martin spinner, usually the 1/4 ounce size, with the yellow dot black blade, yellow dot black body with the gold underside of the blade. Now they make this same lure with a blade that's gold on gold, both sides. Haven't had as good a luck on that. I have some of those. I've caught plenty of fish on them, but for the Sierras, this is my #1 spinner. Now your mileage may vary, but bottom line is, I think you need a minnow plug on one rod to start the day, looking for those big fish. Every hole you hit, work it first with the minnow plug. Follow up with the spinner. This is your numbers bait. Now you can catch some really big fish on a Panther Martin like this, but you can also catch big numbers of trout, and this is what got both of my strikes and both of my fish today. The third offering I always have are flies. And here you'll see a little tiny, a fry minnow imitation. I threw this several times today. I didn't have any action on it, but obviously you throw something like that enough with a split shot on your line, and you're going to get some fish on it. You can also, very effectively throw nymphs, woolly boogers, muddler minnows, any kind of streamer. So that's pretty much it for me. Minnow plugs, Panther Martins, and flies, and if I really want to catch some fish, I carry a can of night crawlers. Now, one of the great things about river fishing, and I'm going to kind of wrap up the end tackle segment here, and we'll talk a little bit about the rods, but one of the things that's really cool about river fishing is the simplicity. So this, other than, I was wearing a chest pack today where I had my cell phone keys, blah, 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 and I had my camera, my GoPro, chest mounted on my chest pack. I didn't have any fishing stuff in the chest pack save for my forceps for taking hooks out of fish. This is where I carry all my gear. I've got this old camo fanny pack. I've had this thing for about 20 years. And I've taken out what's inside of it. In there now I've got a can of night crawlers in there, but I'm trying to keep those in the shade. I never used a worm today, but I did have some along. I didn't want to hook any fish deep. I probably could have caught more fish on crawlers. Use crawlers by all means if you want to keep a few fish, but it's really easy to hook them deep. And as you saw in the opening segment, there were a lot of little rainbows around out there, and I didn't want to hurt the little guys, any more than necessary. I could shake them off the lure pretty good, but if they swallow that worm, I got to cut the leader. Not my bag right now. So anyhow, so here's what I have in my pack. Simple tackle organizer. On one side, I've got some hooks, got a few spoons, got a little mag lip in there, some other Panther Martins, very basic. On this side, got a couple bobbers. I've actually got some soft plastics that are kind of notable. I haven't used these much yet, but I know they're going to work. Here's one of my tiny micro grubs. That's going to look like a nymph. I didn't fish it today. And I also have these very interesting little tiny plastic worms. I want to get in a situation where I wacky rig these and fish them just like I would a Cinco for bass fishing, but I haven't got there yet, but I know in the right situation I'm going to mop some trout up on that. Got a couple different kinds of bobbers. I have a slip bobber, and I have a weighted snap on the line bobber. Bobbers are great for fishing natural bait, drifting a worm under a bobber. That's effective, but they're also very good for casting out and drifting a nymph underneath that bobber. It allows you to get a nice kind of a drag-free float in areas where you couldn't do it by just casting out with a split shot on the line, because the current's going to take it away. That's the thing. When you're in a river, and this is kind of, I shouldn't have to say this, but when you're in a river, you're dealing with current. That's part of the challenge. The two big challenges when fishing a river, one is dealing with the current effectively and predicting where the fish are going to be at any given time of the day. So those are your two challenges. It takes some experience in manipulating your line. Here's kind of a classic example. Let's say we're at the river and we're looking out, and there's some nice water on our side. There's some white water in the middle, but on the far side, there's a nice little slow patch, kind of place where trout like to hold adjacent to that fast current and pick off stuff as it comes by. Now, if you take your rod and you cast a fly over into that pocket, even if you make a perfect cast, or a worm too, even if you make a perfect cast, that fast current in the middle is gonna grab your line and it's gonna drag your offering out of that strike zone really, really quickly. So if we look at my, I guess I could start in with my finesse rod, my fly fishing rod. This is the rod that I would throw. Got a big gob of leaves on the handle. This is the rod I would use for working flies. This is the rod I would use if I was gonna fish a bobber. This rod, it's one of my elite spinning rods. It's 7 foot 6 inches long. That length is important. One, it allows me on a big river like the Middle American to make a pretty long cast, but it also gives me some reach. When I extend my arm up, my hand is about 8 feet off the ground. When I combine that with this rod, so the tip of that rod, it's up there about 15 feet. That will often enable me to lift the line above that fast middle current and get 2 or 3 or 4 seconds of natural drift in that strike zone, and that is a very valuable 3 seconds. Cast out with a bobber on your line, have a fly under there, get your rod tip up, you're on the reel, you're watching that bobber. When that bobber dips, you get into the reel and set the hook, and you can catch a lot of fish that way. But it is the length of the rod that's enabling us to make that presentation, because it's absolutely critical that we keep the line up and out of that fast current in the middle. Stream trout are extremely sensitive to the current. If an offering that they expect to be drifting in a natural way pulls against the current, they will not hit it in most cases. A lure is different. A lure, it's a reaction strike. It overcomes some of that reluctance when the fish are fired up. But if they're kind of in a neutral mood and you're trying to drift, it doesn't matter what it is, a nymph, a salmon egg, a worm. If you're trying to drift it and make a natural presentation, that offering needs to be moving at the same speed and going the same direction as the current around it, or the trout is just gonna see it as blatantly unnatural and they're not gonna take it. So my finesse rod, it is my 7 foot 6 inch elite trout rod. It's very light. I've got it spooled up with 6 pound test. Definitely want to be using 4 or 6 pound test on this rod. And this is rod, I use it with a single split shot. Sometimes I'll use a bobber. Bottom line is I'm spooled up with the P-line fluorocarbon coated 6 pound test, so I'm not running a leader. I'm tying directly to the end of the line. I'm using the line for my leader. It's a very nimble outfit. It works well for presenting flies, small baits, stuff like that. Now, ow, I hooked my finger. Again. Now this is kind of my bread and butter rod. This is my #1 rod. This is the rod I'm going to throw the minnow plug on. This is the rod I'm going to throw the Panther Martin with primarily, although today that first little fish I caught on my finesse rod because I wanted to have a Panther Martin rigged up and a minnow plug rigged up. So guess what? I put the Panther Martin on the lighter rod. I put the minnow plug on this rod. Now this is one of my standard 6 foot 6 inch medium action spinning rods. It's not, you know, it's a good balance. It's not super short, it's not super long, it's pretty maneuverable through the brush. I can haul off and make a good long cast, and that's what I'm using this for. This is the rod that gets abused. This is the rod I want to fight a big fish on. This is the rod that I'm really just hauling off and casting as far as I can with at times to get that minnow plug or that spinner way over there and then kind of let it swing out and work its way all the way across the stream. So, most unique thing about this rig, my finesse rig, That's just an Abu Garcia Cardinal S spinning reel, $25 reel maybe. They just work. They work great. This is, I've talked about this reel on the channel before. This is an Abu Garcia Aura. It's a very expensive spinning reel that Abu Garcia sent me free of charge. It's a great reel. In practical terms, is it any better than that Cardinal S? It's fancier, sexier, smoother, but I don't know that it offers me any more utility. But that's kind of my rant about spinning reels. They're all pretty simple. I know they have more ball bearings, better quality drags. Bottom line is, if you find an inexpensive spinning reel like the Cardinal S that works, if it works, it works. You know, why spend more money? But anyway, I have this cool, sexy Aura, so I thought I better spool it up in a kind of a sexy, schnazzy way. So what I did, you can see the spool there, that is spooled up right now with 15-pound P-line braid. And then I bring that down to a 10-pound test fluorocarbon top shot, which I've just got, you know, attached to that braid with a double uni knot. And then I bring that down to, I wanted to go light this morning because I figured, you know, late summer, the fish, they might be a little spooky. The water's going to be clear. So on the end of that 10-pound, using a double uni knot, I put on, about 3 feet of this 6-pound CXX fluorocarbon coated line. So ultimately at the end of this rig, I'm running with 6-pound test, but it casts like a dream. The braid is just absolutely wonderful. Once you get that top shot off the reel, it just seems like your cast will go and go and go forever. So, and again, this is the rod that I just haul off and I just throw with this thing. So, and I caught that second fish on this rig. So that's kind of the size of it. I know a lot of guys go out, they fish very effectively on the stream with one rod. I always like to have two. One, there's always a chance you're going to fall down on the stream, maybe break your rod, then you have another rod at hand ready to go. I've broken a couple rods out stream fishing, I'm not going to lie. But mostly it's just nice to be able to make kind of dual presentations. It's nice to throw that big fish bait and then follow up with a numbers bait. Or maybe hit a pool with the numbers bait. If you don't hook up with that, you know, drift a fly or a worm or a salmon egg, kind of depending on where you are through that hole. That just allows you, you know, carrying two rods allows you to maximize your effectiveness on every hole you hit. And since you're not in a boat, you're not in any kind of mechanical device, you know, the miles you cover, well, they're covered on your feet. So you want to maximize, you know, the amount of success you have while minimizing the amount of travel you have to put in, because, hey, you can only walk so far, especially on a day like this. It's going to peak up to 100+ degrees. You don't want to be out there, you know, 2 miles from the truck when it's, you know, noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's really about it. Oh, I forgot to mention, split shot. Split shot, split shot, split shot. You need a lot of split shot in a variety of different sizes. Not so much when you're lure fishing, but when you're drifting the flies and you're drifting the bait, you need to add and subtract split shot depending on the depth and the velocity of the water you're fishing to achieve that natural drift. Use too much lead, your worm is stapled to the bottom and it's probably going to get snagged. If you don't use enough lead, the worm's going to be way up there above the trout's head, and they're not going to pull all the way up from the bottom, especially if they're inactive, which generally if I'm fishing a worm, they're fairly inactive. If they're inactive, they're just not going to do that. So remember the split shot. So final words, carry 2 rods, travel light, small lure selection. You want a big fish lure, you want a numbers lure, and you want some finesse stuff. And if you really want to catch fish, be sure to have some worms in your pack as well. That's all I got to say. I'm Kel Kellogg. I love stream fishing. I love the simplicity. It's you against the trout. I grew up doing it. I'm addicted to it. I don't do it often enough now, but it is a kick in the pants, and the season's going to go on until November. So if you want to get out there, you know, enjoy a change of pace, get off the boat, pick out a stream, Yuba, Middle American, whatever, Sacramento up by Redding, whatever you got, get out on the stream and fish for trout and move in water. It's a blast, it's a game changer, it's a whole lot of fun. I'm Kel Kellogg. give you something to think about today, I hope anyway. I am signing off. I will catch you next time right here on YouTube. If you're looking for rods and reels and more, you know where to go. fishhuntshoot.com. Grab one of my elite spinning rods, get some nymphs, go out, catch some trout. Catch you next time, guys. Thanks for all the support, and please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done that.